What Mark will have after 500 years is a question answered in the very last issue of Invincible, because after the dust had settled following the final battle against Thrag, who ended up dissolving in the sun, Mark was absolutely fried too until he got swept out of there by Alan, who assured Eve that Mark will be taken care of as his skin eventually manages to recover with some advanced tech. His daughter Terra, however, talks to Debbie, who was bawling her eyes out as she explains that Nolan, aka the Emperor of Viltrum, might have been hurt way too badly by Thrag, which we find out he was, as Mark comes in to check on him only to find out that Nolan's heart was basically way too damaged to let his body repair itself, meaning that he will die. Nolan's dying wish was for Mark to take his place and lead the rest of the Viltrumites, who at the time had for the past 5 years been living happily on Earth and had built entire families with humans. But in typical Invincible fashion, Mark tries to turn down the responsibility until Nolan explains to him that he won't be able to hide from danger forever, and then reminds him of the kind of world he can build for his daughter with the Viltrum Empire under his command, especially because of his compassion that actually led to all of this and changed Nolan in the first place. Nolan dies, telling Mark to change Viltrum like he changed him, as Debbie then walks in to cry with Mark before they break the news to Terra. Mark took on the responsibility his father wished upon him, but it quickly came with a consequence in the form of the ruler of Earth, also known as Robot, being scared that Mark would order the Viltrumites to turn on him and take down his leadership of Earth, as he kidnaps all the Viltrumite part human children, forcing Viltrumites to turn against Mark. But that didn't really work out for him, as Mark quickly gathered as many forces as possible and convinced the Viltrumites that he will have their children completely protected as long as they don't kill anyone, before finally punching a hole through Robot, ending that chapter once and for all. He then goes over to Immortal and basically tells him that he wants him to maintain the peace Rex brought onto Earth and essentially rule Earth from behind the scenes by monitoring the governments and whatnot, which Immortal ends up accepting, especially after talking to Robot's brain that actually agreed that things are way better this way. All the Viltrumites got their children back and everything settled, only for Mark to find out that he actually had a son that he never knew about from his old interaction with Anissa, who had recently just died. The son was called Marcus and was raised with his stepdad Scott. Mark was therefore so conflicted that he decided to ignore Marky for 2 weeks straight and went to the ceremony officially declaring him as Viltrum's new emperor, with all the Viltrumites kneeling before him while Terra is asking Eve what makes her dad so special. Debbie, however, intentionally missed the ceremony as she sat in front of Nolan's grave, where she then simply explained to Mark that the Viltrumite chapter of her life is over, with the two then talking about how it felt like it was just yesterday that Mark was reading comics in his bathroom. Alan then came and thanked Mark for helping against Thrag, telling him that he's gonna go and continue his work with the Coalition of Planets, while Mark was just zoned out thinking how Alan got him involved in all of this by basically setting up Oliver to get killed. Things were pretty awkward, but Mark just told Alan that it's fine, he'll be here if he ever needs his help, he just basically has to know that they will never be the good friends they once were. Mark was then pretty unsure on what to do from there, as he feels like he's kinda wasting the power the Empire has by just staying on Earth, but his final sign to leave Earth was just a little later when he got the call from Immortal telling him that his son Marky had discovered his powers and is out causing chaos, as he quickly heads out to control the situation, with Eve who finally convinces him that he should in fact just face reality and deal with Marky personally, and that he doesn't have to tell him how he was conceived because it's not like they ever told Terra how she was conceived either. So he quickly took Marky and flew him away to finally reveal to him that he's actually his father, which ended up knocking him unconscious. And so while Eve took Marky to the Pentagon until he could control himself, Mark went to help with the cleanup, only to see the Mauler twins actually helping too, making him realize how much Rex had improved the planet, as he then goes and tells Immortal that the Viltrumites no longer belong here because the planet is mostly safe and because the other Viltrumites are gonna grow up to do the same as Marky. So he makes the decision and orders all the Viltrumites to pack their things to leave except for Marky, who he decided to leave on Earth because his stepdad Scott wanted to stay behind, and because Mark figured it's better that Marky grows up a bit human like he himself did, but not before he sat him down and told him the entire story of Viltrum all the way from the beginning with the Scourge virus till he himself became the Emperor, where he indirectly explained to him why he wasn't there to raise him without telling him what Anissa exactly did to him. Marky was absolutely fascinated with the fact that he's a Viltrumite, but this all felt so surreal to Mark, and he just needed the extra push from his mom to go and lead Viltrum to bigger things, as he then told Scott just to let Immortal know if he needs any help with the kid, and then said his final goodbyes before leaving. Debbie went on to help raise Marky for as long as she could till he eventually became his own man and took on the Invincible title to help around, knowing full well that with that name comes a big legacy to live up to. However, before Mark could go on his grand mission to go and help the entire universe, there were a few loose ends that deserved to get covered as a part of this ultimate conclusion, starting with Battle Beast's daughter arriving back onto her homeworld just to kill hundreds of her race for allowing Thrag to conquer their world, before she then sets out on her own mission to find a worthy opponent, promising not to rest until every Viltrumite in the world is dead. The second one is Angstrom actually having a son who is just now arriving on Mark's dimension after going through multiple dimensions before realizing realizing that his dad is dead, which seemingly set up an off-panel battle between him and Marky. And thirdly is Marky punching a villain called Vengeance, which is like a play on the Batman theme because the villain coincidentally spits out Darkwing, who had been stuck in the Shadowverse since the Invincible War. But back to Mark's grand mission of saving the universe, we see it documented with Terra growing up and helping the Viltrumites secure countless planets until she was old enough to join the Conservation Order, which is a program that basically sends out people to fix whatever machines and systems Viltrum had installed throughout the planets that the Viltrumites had helped to ultimately ensure that the populations are still thriving. But then a few hundred years in, we see Mark holding a big meeting where, among other things, he addresses the fact that he had purposely shaved his mustache to represent Viltrum's new way of peace. But with this era, things were so peaceful that Alan actually called in Mark and basically explained to him that there is a little problem, because ever since Viltrum started saving the galaxy and making it so safe, so many planets had decided to leave the coalition of planets as they feel like they don't need it for protection. To which Mark replied, proposing that maybe the coalition doesn't need to exist anymore, which ultimately ended up leading to a little war between the two sides, where we most notably see Thrag's daughter Ursel fighting with Mark against Battle Beast's daughter and the rest of Alan's side that eventually got defeated, as Alan just realizes that Mark had really changed everything and thus admits that the coalition truly didn't need to exist after all. Ursel and Terra become really good friends as we see them having a conversation talking about the war with the coalition, with Terra explaining why she sat out the war and why she was against it, until Terra then got a call and quickly flew over to Mark, who told her mom's time seemingly came as they both broke down watching her say her last words and slowly fade away, only for Eve to unlock her full powers like she did against Conquest and revive herself, realizing that she is essentially immortal. Mark then went on to create more and more peace between civilizations, but things didn't continue to be so sweet, as at one point Terra would return home only to see her dad and Marky beat up on the ground, as it turns out that Marky had lost control and fought his dad out of hatred for him, leaving him behind on Earth, which makes sense under the assumption that at that point Marky had lost everyone he had ever cared for, like Debbie and Scott. He explained that he used to worship his dad and his legacy until he started feeling like Mark loved his sister Terra more because she was made with love and got to live with him, while he was made with hate because of how his mom Anissa doomed him into this world. But Mark assured him that that wasn't the case, promising that he's proud of him and that they have all the time in the world to fix this. Later, however, we see Terra fighting a champion of a civilization that promised to make peace on their world if she won, which she pretty quickly did. Her win shocked the leader of the civilization, who got even more mad when Terra refused to eliminate the champion until Mark told him that this is how the Viltrum Empire operates, to set an example and bring peace everywhere, which got the leader even more mad as he tries to strike Mark with his sword only for it to break, making the guy absolutely stunned, realizing that all of the Viltrumites are just as strong as their champion Terra, if not more, and yet they refuse to rule with force and conquer planets. The leader therefore kneels down asking Mark to kill him, but Mark refuses, essentially telling him that ages ago his people would have gladly done that, but he is here to offer peace, stating that this is the Viltrumite way. And so finally, as Terra sits on her phone doom scrolling, Eve stands beside Mark, telling him that he did everything his father asked by changing the Viltrumites completely and turning them into a force celebrated across the universe. Mark then admits that he's been thinking about his father a lot lately, and the one moment that stands out is his father asking him what he will have after 500 years, to which he just couldn't help but smile.